to do appointments with you all up at ATI as well. So on the last slide, I've got my contact information. So definitely feel free to jot that down and reach out if you ever would like to connect to talk over your resume more or mock interviews, things like that. We're here to help with those things. So today we're going to focus on writing resumes, also get into Handshake and show you all how to use that. And then briefly we'll go over cover letters. So it sounds like you've all got a resume already because that's what your class assignment is and you've turned it in. But what is the value of a resume? So what are the things that you're using it for? You're using it for applying for internships, applying for full-time and part-time positions, but also for things like scholarships. A lot of times they'll ask for resumes. So just keep in mind that having an updated version of your resume on hand at all times is going to be helpful for anything that you need to apply to. Obviously, you want to include your education. It's a big factor in what you're doing right now professionally in your life, but also include technical training. A lot of employers that are hiring for more technical positions, they want to know about your training and experience with specific technologies. So make sure you're including those things on your resume as well. And it's just a place for you to highlight leadership, communication skills, and any relevant experience you have to that position that you're applying for. And it also shows through past experiences, your work ethic, and desires and career goals that you've laid out for yourself. So through the resume, you want to really knock off the employer's socks. And keep in mind that needs to be done pretty quickly because the average employer says they spend about 10 to 20 seconds scanning your resume. So when we have a career expo here in Columbus, the employers are getting hundreds of resumes. So they don't have time to really look at all of them. So you want to make sure you're catching them within those 10 to 20 seconds to make them want to look longer at your resume. And how to do that is not necessarily by adding flashy font or anything like that. It's really with the content and how you write about your experiences. It's your marketing ad for you, yourself, your skills, and how you relate to that company and the skills that they're looking for. So you want to show them that you've done a lot of work to get to where you are and that you'll be a valuable asset to their company. And then the big thing is, again, focusing on the employer's needs, not your own. So, you can share a career objective, but you definitely want to have some of your skills that you bring to the table included on your resume. It should really paint that picture of why you're a good fit for the position for which they're hiring and for their company. How do you bring value? And we'll talk through that as we're looking at some of the resume samples and different components of the resume. So the first part of your resume should be your contact info at the top of the page. Your name should be a bit larger than the rest of your info, and usually bolding it looks nice. Include your address. If you want, you can include a home and school address, or if you want, you can just have your phone number and email. Most of the time, employers are really at this point just reaching out via phone or email. But if you want to show that you're local to where the company is, including your address can be useful. Also, for those of you who might have a LinkedIn profile, you can include the link to your LinkedIn profile on your contact information as well. Typically, we tell students to use their OSU email for the email that you have on the top. It's definitely going to be professional. You don't have to worry about it getting lost in spam or anything like that. So that's what we would encourage you to do is use your OSU email. But if you decide to use another Gmail account or something like that, just make sure that the email address you're using is appropriate. Some people have funny email addresses like ilovedancing@yahoo.com or something like that. So just think about, is it appropriate before you put it on your resume? Objective statements. So that's something that it's sort of up to you. You don't necessarily need to include it on the resume. If you are applying for a specific position, then you can include, like, I'm applying to this green merchandising position with Cargill. So you want to be very specific. Some HR people have told us that when they have a lot of applicants for various positions. It helps them to just know which position you're applying for when they quickly look at your resume. So again, if you're going to use it, be very specific. You might add a couple little things about the skills that you would bring to that particular position or organization, but typically it's a sentence or two at the most. When you're getting closer to graduation or after graduation, then you might include a professional summary in place of the objective, and that might be a bit longer, like 3-4 sentences, laying out your professional skills and a quick snapshot of your experiences as a professional. But at this point, you just would use an objective if you use anything at all, and again, keeping it very specific to the job that you're applying for. The next section, as students, if you include objective, education would come just next after it. If you don't include an objective, then education should be the first thing on your resume. After you graduate and you have more experience, you might move education to the bottom of your resume, but typically as a student, we would encourage you to put it at the top. Many of you are looking for internships, and so as an employer looking for interns, they'll want to see what your program is that you're studying in right away, so it's good to include it at the top. Also, if you're graduating, your degree might be the most relevant thing you have right as you're getting into the job search. So again, having that at the top, showing that you're a recent grad, is where you want that to be positioned on your resume. And then you'll include the title of Ohio State University, and for ATI, Agricultural Technical Institute. If you get an associate's degree from ATI, then you can list the date of the associate's degree that you receive once you receive that. But for now, you can just list expected date of graduation. You also want to include your major, and if you have a minor, include that as well. I've noticed recently a lot of students are leaving their major off of it, and that's really important to remember to include that, because that really shows us what it is that you're studying, what's the professional ambitions that you have. So make sure you include your major. And some students will also include their GPA. What do you all think about including a GPA? I'll just go ahead. If you have, we typically say if you have a 3.0 or higher, go ahead and put it on there. It's up to you. Otherwise, if a company isn't specifically asking for it, you don't really need to put it on there. If they are, then, and it's below a 3.0, just be able to explain, you know, maybe you had a bad semester. The main thing that you want to share is that you're working on developing your GPA, you've learned better study habits, and that you are building up skills, so you've learned how to improve. That's always a big thing, is showing that you're knowledgeable and learning how to improve something. You could also include your major GPA if that's better than your overall GPA. Just make sure that you indicate that it's your major GPA, and not just your cumulative GPA if you include that, because you want to make sure that you're being honest and clear with the employer. At this point, you do not need to include high school unless if you're in your first semester or your first year as a college student, then you can go ahead and leave some high school stuff on there, because that is probably most of the experience you have at this point. But after you transfer into your sophomore year and beyond, you really want to limit the amount of space you're spending on high school activities. So for education, you don't need to list high school at all in your education after your sophomore year. And then activities, there are things like FFA, 4-H, Eagle Scouts, maybe some other really relevant training that you've done from high school that you can include. But again, just keeping the space for those types of things sort of limited. If you have like 35 FFA 4-H awards from high school, you don't want to take up a whole page including all of those. So just limit it to like 1 or 2 major accomplishments. But those things are relevant likely to what it is that you want to do with your career. So keeping some space dedicated to that is just fine. You can also include, after you list your institution of like Ohio State, you can include a relevant coursework or relevant skills section. And there you can list any course that you're currently taking or previously taken that's relevant to the job. So you don't need to list every course, and you shouldn't list every course that you've ever taken, but a handful of courses that you've taken that have really given you skills that are going to be useful in that position. So some examples I've included here, if you're looking at a business type of position, it might be listing the human resource management and leadership, managerial records and analysis, problem solving with spreadsheets and databases, and business law. The other thing you can also do is if there are projects you've done in specific courses where you really took on that project and got a lot of experience out of it that they're asking for in the job description, you can include course projects and give some explanation as to your accomplishments and the work that you did through that course project as it relates to the position that you're applying for. The important thing there to remember is really to think about what you specifically did. So there may have been an overall team project, but what was your role within that team? What did you bring to the team and to the project? So, and that would be the same in an interview whenever, or at a career expo when talking to an employer. We hear a lot from them that students say, we did this, we did that. And then when they're asked, what did they do? They can't speak to that. So make sure that you're able to clarify what your role was in the group project on your resume as well as in an interview. And then over here on the side, you see it says, do not write out course numbers. If you're outside of OSU, most people don't know like what chemistry 1100 is or something like that. So just put the name of the course as I've done here in the examples. And then you'll go into your experience section. So apart from the education, this is one of the more important parts of your resume. And you want to make sure that you're really highlighting your accomplishments and results of your work, not just listing your duties. And again, as I see a lot of the resumes that roll in, this is the part that students struggle with the most. And I understand that because it is kind of difficult and something that, you may not have thought about your experiences in these ways before. So first, you'll include the company name, where you've been working. So as the example here says, Extension, The Ohio State University, then the city and state. Then you'll include your job title and the dates of employment. Now, how I have it set up here is not like you have to do it exactly that way. Some people will list the job title first and then the company underneath, but just know that those are the things that should be included. And for your formatting, you always just want it to be clear, concise, and consistent. So if you do it like this for one experience, continue to list the other experiences in the exact same way. Then in your bullet points, as I mentioned, you don't want to just have a list of all of your duties, but really getting at what were accomplishments from that experience and how do those accomplishments and skills relate to the job that you're doing next. So really think through, if you've got 10 bullet points for one of your previous jobs, do most of those things relate to the job that you're trying to do next? Or is there some that you could remove potentially? Another thing is to include metrics wherever possible. So if you managed people, tell us that and include like how many people did you manage? If you were feeding calves at a local farm, how many head of cattle were you dealing with? If you publish bi-monthly reports. Another thing that some students have done is maybe, through your student organizations, you're developing marketing ads for different programs that you're doing. So, if you know that you're increasing viewership of the Facebook page of a student org or a company that you're working for, say that. And the nice part about social media is it tells you exactly how many people are following a page or viewing a post that you've done. So it's easy to put a metric to that. So you can say you increase viewership of your internships Facebook page by 100 viewers or 30%, whatever that might be. So anywhere you can include those hard numbers of showing how you've made improvements really shows how you're bringing value to that organization. And you may not be able to do that for everything you've done, but where you can do it and where you may have accomplishments that you can show those increases or the value of what you did, make sure that you're doing that. So here I say, does not have to be just work experience. You can have, again, the class project experience, volunteer experiences, all of those things. You just want to make sure that you're identifying it in the appropriate way. So some students will have a work experience section, then they may have like a volunteer and active leadership experience section. I'll show you some samples that kind of walk through that. The other thing is make sure that anything you have on your resume, you are able to speak about that in an interview. So if an employer asks you about a volunteer opportunity that you have talked about on your resume and something that you did at that volunteer opportunity, make sure that when you're questioned about it, you're able to really talk about it and give the information. And same with class projects. Make sure that you really understood what you did and you know how to articulate that in an interview. Then you can have a section after experience as well for special skills. So this can be kind of a catch-all section where you might include some relevant skills, QuickBooks, project management, technical and business writing. If you had any training and certifications, honors and awards, or leadership development types of things, you can include those there. Some students will do like outdoor manual types of jobs that might say, ability to lift 50 pounds or be CPR certified. You want to include that. If that's what they're asking for, show them that you're able to do that. So you can include that here under these special or other skills. The note says you do not need to include obvious things like Microsoft Office products unless specifically mentioned. Word, typically most people know, but like if they're asking in that job description that Microsoft Word, then you can go ahead and include it. Excel is one thing that sometimes if you know it really well, that would be still useful to include because not everyone is really well versed in Excel, and in the business sector that's going to be important. So it can be a skill, but kind of look at what they're asking for in the job description and let that be a guide as to what you're including. If you have skills that they're asking for in that job description, make sure you're including them on your resume. Otherwise, the employer has no idea that you know how to do that. References. So the reference sheet should actually be a separate document from your resume. Use the same heading as your resume, and then you can list 3 to 5 referees. So you don't need to include it with your resume unless the employer is specifically asking for it. Typically, you do want to have it ready to go when you're invited to an interview, though. So just make sure that you've got people lined up that you can use. And you want to use professional contacts, so it could be a faculty advisor, a professor, someone who's been your former supervisor, a student organization advisor, and making sure that whomever you choose is someone who knows you pretty well and can speak highly about you and the work that you've done. So again, that's why it's important while you're here at Ohio State to make sure that you're really connecting with your faculty and your faculty advisors, getting to know them. So if you do have to ask them to serve as a reference, they can speak highly about you instead of just, yeah, they're my advisee, but I've only met with them once, so I don't really know them. So just making sure that you're developing those relationships so when they'll help you along the way, they'll help you find internships and jobs, but also if you need to use them as a reference, they can speak highly of you instead of just general statements. And then I'm going to show you some sample resumes here, and then just remember that you can always come and meet with our office for additional help. So this site is embedded in the presentation that I shared with Kim, and so you can check that out anytime. But then you can, you refer to the links. And then there's one over here that's resume samples. I'm going to open it from where I have it saved on my desktop, but you can refer back to that at any time. Now let me, whoops. Sorry, 1 second while I figure out how to share the other part of this screen. Okay. So now you should be able to see a couple resume samples here. So this one is, there are 3 on here, and I'm just going to scroll through them pretty quickly just to give you a quick look at the 3 different samples. And you can see they're all slightly different. And so the thing to note is that while they're all different, there is not one right or one wrong way to do it. The main thing is to be clear and consistent in what you choose as your format. So make sure that it's easy for an employer to quickly look at the page, go down through it, see your education, your experience, and your skills, and to not find any grammar or spelling issues. That's something you really want to pay attention to. So you list, as I said, education first, and then you can see this student has.
Mary?
Yep.
Sorry to interrupt, but is there any way you can make it a little bit bigger on your screen?
Is that better?
Yep, helps. Thank you.
Yep. So education first, then they've got their experience broken up by customer service work experience. So perhaps they're applying for a customer service type of job, so they want to share this experience first with the employer because it's most relevant to the position they're applying to. Then they've got some higher education work experience. So as a student, they've had a part-time job, so they're including that. And they've got their additional skills, honors, and community service. So you can kind of break things up depending on what you want to highlight for the position. So this one, slightly different format. You can see they've decided to use 2, the campus address and permanent address. Again, that's totally fine. Education still at the top. Then this person might be looking for international types of experience. So they're really highlighting their internship abroad, their more abroad internship experience, and then they get into the work experience. So if you have, if you wanted to work in extension as an educator, for example, you might list experience, education experience, or teaching experience, or community outreach experience first. Within that, you can include course projects, things like that. And then if you had some part-time jobs, that could just be under regular work experience or work experience that would come next. And again, those part-time positions are still important to include, and it's really showing your work ethic, sharing things from the part-time positions that can be useful in the next job. In most cases, that's going to be communication skills, customer service skills, sometimes leadership, and if you're training people on the job. So just think about what you're including and how you're talking about it. So the other thing to kind of look at in here is how they're talking about their experiences. So you don't see a bullet point with just 1 or 2 words after it. They're kind of giving a little bit more of detail. So they say, for example, as interior designer, they collaborated with other teams to create unified company image for this furniture company. Participated in weekly critiques through the use of distance communication software. So just giving that little bit more detail. Up here, they're talking about increasing their sales 2% annually. They trained and supervised 5 new employees. So wherever you can, including that little bit extra level of detail to really better paint the picture of your experience for the employer. And then you see some of them say references available upon request. It's up to you if you want to add that line or not. But you can add it at the bottom. Again, just remember that you don't need to actually include the references with your resume. It's a separate document. So let's see if I can switch back here. Okay, and the next thing I wanted to show you is Handshake. So before I go into Handshake, does anyone have any questions about resumes?
Let me ask one thing about, we have a lot of students that are maybe taking some College Credit Plus courses. Do you have any suggestions on how they list those? So let's say they took College Credit Plus courses while they were in high school, and maybe it's through Kent State. Should they list Kent State as one of their universities, like under their education section?
Unless the courses you were taking were like business courses for your major, if it was just general education courses, I would say not to list it. Typically, the employer wants to, at the end of the day, know where you're getting your degree from. So if you did work at another institution, but it was just a few general courses, then you don't really need to list it on your resume. But for some people, when they're transitioning into their first semester at a new institution and don't yet have a GPA from Ohio State, for example, and maybe they had a really good GPA from the courses that they took at Kent State as college plus, then you could list it until you have an OSU GPA. Just make sure that if you say Kent State, you're including that it was the college plus courses. But yeah, I'd say as you're here longer and have more of your coursework accumulating in your major at Ohio State, that you don't need to list those College Plus courses anymore.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
Any questions?
No. All right. And just
Not right now.
okay, cool. I'll show you all Handshake next. So bear with me while I switch screens again. So Handshake is the online jobs board for the university. And all of you have an account already because you're students at Ohio State. So to get to Handshake, you can find it on our careers website. You can also just Google or type into a search handshake.osu.edu. And then once you do that, it'll take you to the page that looks like this. And you can click on Access Handshake. And then from there, you'll want to click on this OSU Students and Alumni button. So when you log in, it's going to show you over here on the left in the blue box. It'll under where it says Mary, the Ohio State University, it'll say set up an account. You don't need to do that. You already have an account. So just if you click on this OSU Students and Alumni here, it'll take you to the OSU login that you use for your Buckeye Mail or for logging into Buckeye Link. So this is where you should be going to log in so that you don't accidentally make a second account since, like I said, you've already got one. So you can come and log in from here using the same password that you use to log into all your other Ohio State stuff. And then once you're in, it'll take you to your student homepage. So let me get to that. If you're logging in for the first time, it's going to walk you through a few steps of setting up your account. So it'll have some information already in there about you that it pulls from Buckeye Link, but then it'll ask you things like, where would you like to work? What types of positions are you looking for? What industry would you like to be working in? And when you fill out those questions with the options that they have, it just helps to tailor the system to your needs. So for example, when you log in, this page for you will pull up with events that are most, and jobs that are most related to what you've said that you're interested in. So the system becomes tailored to you and your needs. The more you use it, the more information you add. You can add, so you will all be uploading your resume, And when you're on your profile page, which you can get to from where it says, mine says Test Mary is my name, but there's a little drop down there. Your profile is the first link. You can also go to career interests, and that's where you can update or make changes to that section where you're telling the system what your preferences are in terms of positions or location where you want to work. But the profile is where you will, it's kind of like your resume, but online. So when you first log in, there will be a green button here in the middle that I've already used, so it's kind of moved off of mine. But it says, it asks, like, don't write everything twice, like pull from your resume to add the things in here. So if you click on it, it allows you to pull all the information from your resume into the system so that you don't have to go through and manually fill out your education, your work experience, and all of those things. Just make sure if you choose to have it imported in that way, the information, that you still go through and review it to make sure that everything looks good. Some of it, when it imports, it can be a little bit funky with the formatting. So it just takes a few minutes to look through and make sure that you're doing that. And so for those of you who use LinkedIn, which is another like online jobs and professional networking tool, it's kind of similar in how you're adding the information. You can include projects that you've done. You can include skills. So when an employer comes into the system and searches for, like, I want to find skills that are majoring in agricultural systems management with these different technology skills, your profile will pop up if you've indicated that you have those on your profile. But you don't have to make your profile public to employers. That's up to you. So right here, I've made my test account public so I can share things with you all when I'm in here. But you can make it private. You can decide how you want to share. The upside to making it public is the employers that are in here, which we have to say it's okay for employers to access Ohio State students. So they are being vetted by the university, and they sort of get a rating to say whether or not they're a trustworthy company. So they're being vetted by us, and they also then can reach out to you and invite you to things like interviews and workshops if they're going to be on campus. So it can be a good way to do some extra career internship and job searching without actually having to even apply for stuff. But alternatively, if you didn't want to make your profile available to the employer, you can still come in here and search for jobs and apply to jobs using resumes that you upload. So here under my profile, so that's just a quick overview of the profile, but then you can come to the Documents tab, and that's where you can add documents. So I've got one resume in here. You can upload cover letters. If the employer wants a writing sample, you can upload that. But to add a new resume, so for example, say that I've applied to one position and now I want to apply to a different position. I'm going to add a new resume because when I apply to a different job, I want to tweak my resume for that new position. If I have some skills that this particular position is asking for that maybe I didn't really share as well as I could have on the last resume because it was for a different job, I'm going to tweak this resume to really show that employer how I fit for this particular job. And then I'll upload the second resume so that I can share it. So typically I might put my name and then the company name or the position that I'm applying for so I remember which one is which. Just a good thing to do regardless, even if you're emailing your resume to an employer. Sometimes, again, they get a lot of resumes, so saving it with your name and the job title and the companies makes it easy for them to find it, as well as you when you want to go back and review and pull different resumes. So this is where you can come to upload your resume. And then once you've got that ready, you're able to, well, before you can start searching for jobs, but once you got your resume in there, you can actually apply to jobs. So you can come to this jobs tab, and it's just a regular old job search engine. So lots of you have probably used various job search tools like Indeed and things like that. From here, again, these employers are specifically choosing that they want to send these jobs out to Ohio State students and students in your particular fields. So again, it's just a different applicant pool that will be coming through here than on Indeed.com. You know, the people who come here want OSU students. So it kind of gives you a little bit of advantage when you apply to a job through this system. But you can search by keywords, you can search by employer name, you can search by city or state. There are other filters, so you could just search internships if you wanted to. Searching by industry is another great idea, so you can look through it. There's farming, ranching, and fishing. There's also just lots of general business types of things. So you could look through like accounting, for example. There's HR, stuff like that. And lots of other things that you can include. Then you can click on the See Jobs, and it's going to show you those jobs that you've filtered. And you can also create a search alert where you get emails from that search that you saved, so that you don't necessarily even have to come into the system. It's going to send you a message telling you that new jobs have popped up. And then as you're looking through the job, so a good idea as you're continuing to work on your resumes might be to come into the system and look for a couple jobs that you think look of interest to you. And then click on the job and really read through it and see what types of skills are they looking for. And I'll admit some do a better job of posting what they're looking for than others. So maybe look through a few different ones, but they're going to have a job description, and they're going to talk through the types of skills that they want you to have. This one seems to talk a lot about different computer skills, preparing technical reports, interacting with senior program officials, right? So if I have some of this experience, I want to make sure that I'm including it on my resume and making that clear to the employer that I've got the experience they want for this job. You can also see other students who have worked at this same position, or not the same position, but the same company. So they're students here at Ohio State. And you might know them, but you can also reach out to them and get more information from them on how they liked working for the organization. You can see other jobs posted by the same organization. And if they were attending a career expo, that would also show up in here. Or if they were coming to campus for a certain event, that would show up in here as well. So use some job descriptions to really help you as you're developing and tailoring your resume. See what the skills are the employers are looking for. They write them right there in those job descriptions. And it can really help you think about, oh, yeah, I have that experience or skill, but you know what? I forgot to include it on my resume. And I've looked at 5 job descriptions for an HR, a human resource intern, and all of those job descriptions have asked for these 3 skills that I forgot to put on my resume. So it just kind of helps you to see what's the industry asking for to help you as you're building your resume. So that's jobs. The other thing I want to show you while we're in here is events. So if you click on the events tab, it'll show you unfortunately, most of these events are in Columbus, but however, even if they're in Columbus, you're still welcome to attend any of them. And some of them are virtual events, so that means you can log in from anywhere on your computer and attend the event. But you can look, there's a lot of different things. It's beyond our College of Food, Agricultural, and Environmental Sciences. There's also stuff from Fisher College of Business, the College of Arts and Sciences, so university-wide, and you can attend most of these things. But if you click on the Find Career Fairs here at the top, it'll show you all the career fairs going on at the university. So in the past, we've had an autumn career fair at ATI. This year it was decided that it would be best to move that to the spring semester for student and employer benefit. So the expo up there will be in the spring, and you'll be able to see it here in Handshake. But we do have one here in Columbus on the 27th of September that, again, all of you are welcome to attend. So to find more information about it, you can click here on the link of the Food, Agricultural, and Environmental Sciences Career Expo. It gives you the date, the time, the location, and then just importantly to check out if you were thinking of coming. On the left here, you can click View All Employers, and it's going to give you a list of those employers attending the expo. You can look at all of them. We have almost 100. You can also filter on the left here. You can say, I only want to see employers that are hiring for internships, or I only want to see those that are hiring for full-time positions. So you can filter it down. The other thing that I would encourage you to look at if you're thinking about coming is to click on the company name if you're interested in them, or even if you're not, take some time, click through all of them, and really read about the company, learn a little bit about what they do. They've got their website over here. They also list in here, some of the employers will post their jobs in Handshake prior to the expo, so you can see what they're hiring for. So you can see there's a few jobs listed here for Archer Daniels Midland that they've already posted. So again, if you're going to go to the fair and you want to meet with this employer, knowing something about them is really important. It'll make you stand out. And also you can say, oh, you know, this flavors intern position sounds interesting to me. I'm going to read through the job description and make sure I tailor my resume for this particular position. So when I meet them at the expo, I can hand them a tailored resume. So you don't need to do that for every single employer, but if there are some that you're particularly interested in, tailoring your resume is a great idea. And again, same thing would go in the spring at the ATI Career Expo. All of this, it will be in Handshake, and same information will be available. So any questions about Handshake before I switch to cover letters for the last couple of minutes?
Questions about anything?
Yeah. Handshake is available after graduation too, correct?
Yes. Yeah, they remain available to Handshake, right, after their alumni?
Yes. Yep, definitely. Still, you will still have access after you graduate. Good question.
Okay. And we only have about 4 minutes left in our class, so.
Okay, we'll quickly wrap it up then. So the last couple slides that I wanted to share with you are about cover letter. So I'll just quickly. And so the jobs will tell you if they're requiring a cover letter. So if they are, just make sure that you, again, tailor the cover letter specifically to the position for which you are applying. You want to make a personalized cover letter for each position. So it should not be a generic cover letter that you're using for every single position. And then what to include, it should be one page, have your, address it to whomever is the hiring manager or the HR representative. Then your opening states the position that you're applying for and why you're interested in the position, and also include where you found out about the position. The middle part, you discuss your strengths and qualifications. Typically, again, read through that job description and find, what are the 3 to 4 major skills that they're looking for in this, and then relate to those skills through your experiences in that middle paragraph. And then the closing, you're going to identify next steps. Thank them for reviewing your resume that's attached, and tell them you look forward to hearing from them regarding an interview. Again, keep it to one page, keep it concise, and keep it specific to that job. And again, refer them to the resume. So I have included links to samples in here that can be really helpful if you are developing a cover letter. So we don't have a lot of time, obviously, to go into detail about that, but just refer to those samples should you need to write a cover letter and need some help with it. And then again, we are available, even though we're not at ATI here in Columbus, via Skype, phone, FaceTime. You can reach out, set up an appointment, and happy to help you out anytime. So any last questions? No?
You have a question? No? Okay. Questions for anybody? All right. Thank you very much. Very helpful.